On a clear morning in Miami Beach, with no rain and no storm anywhere in sight, the streets start to flood. Water pushes up through storm drains. It seeps through pavement. It collects in intersections that were rebuilt specifically to prevent this from happening. The city turns on its pumps, all of them, and the water keeps rising. This isn't a failure in the way most people would expect. The system is working. The pumps are running. The infrastructure is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But the conditions it was designed for no longer exist. Miami Beach spent $500 million trying to solve a flooding problem. What it uncovered instead is a much harder one. Because in this city, the water isn't just coming from the ocean, it's coming from the ground itself. Streets in Miami Beach flooded under blue skies with zero rainfall in October 2023. No storm, no surge, just a king tide, a predictable, calendared astronomical event pushing water through the ground itself, up through storm drains, through the limestone beneath the pavement, and into intersections, parking garages, and the lobbies of buildings that paid engineers to make sure this would not happen. The engineers did their jobs. The problem is what changed after the plans were drawn. Miami Beach sits on a foundation of oolitic limestone, a porous, Swiss cheese-like rock formation that runs beneath the entire southern tip of Florida. It is the same formation that feeds the Biscayne Aquifer, the primary freshwater source for roughly 4 million people in Miami-Dade County. This geology is what made South Florida buildable in the first place. It is also what makes it impossible to waterproof. Porous limestone does not stop water, it conducts it. When sea levels rise and tidal pressure increases, water does not wait for a breach in a seawall. It moves laterally and vertically through the rock, finding paths through the substrate that no pump system and no concrete barrier can intercept. Engineers call this process groundwater infiltration, or more precisely, subsurface inundation. What residents call it is water coming up through the floor. This is the part most people miss when they hear about Miami Beach's flood mitigation program. The mental image is water coming over, a wave, a surge, a storm. But a significant and growing portion of Miami Beach's flooding problem is water coming from below. And that changes everything about what an engineering solution can actually accomplish. The city's stormwater pump system, a network of roughly 80 pumps installed at a cost of approximately $500 million, was designed to remove surface water. It does that. During rain events, it performs as specified, moving water off streets and into Biscayne Bay faster than the old passive drainage system could. On that metric, the investment worked. But the system was engineered against a baseline sea level that no longer exists. When the project was designed and approved, the planning assumptions reflected sea level projections from the early 2000s. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration tide gauge at Virginia Key, less than 2 miles from Miami Beach, has recorded a sea level rise of approximately 1 foot over the past century, with the rate of rise accelerating since 2010. The current rate of rise in this region is roughly 3 to 4 millimeters per year, and recent data suggests that rate is not slowing. 1 foot of sea level rise sounds manageable in isolation. In a city whose average elevation is less than 4 feet above mean sea level, it is not isolation. It is a third of your entire margin. If you are finding this kind of analysis useful, the kind that goes past the headline and into the actual mechanism, subscribe to Deep Signal and hit the bell. This is what we do every week. And if this video is worth your time, a like genuinely helps more people find it. Now, here is where this gets more complicated. The pump system that was installed to protect Miami Beach discharges into Biscayne Bay. That is how the system removes water. It pumps it out and it goes into the bay. But as sea levels in the bay rise, the hydraulic pressure against which the pumps are working increases. Pumps are rated for specific head pressure, the resistance they push against. As bay levels rise, that resistance grows. The pumps work harder, move less water per cycle, and the time it takes to clear a flooded street extends. The system is not broken. It is being operated in conditions outside its design envelope. This pattern appears across coastal infrastructure globally, but Miami Beach makes it unusually legible because the investment was so large, so recent, and so publicly celebrated. When the city raised roads in the South Beach neighborhood by as much as 2 feet, it was presented as a solution. For some residents, it worked. Their immediate street flooding improved. For others, it created new problems. Raising a road changes its drainage relationship with adjacent properties. Water that once sheeted off the road now pools against building foundations that sit at the old grade. Several business owners in areas where road raising was completed reported increased water intrusion into ground floor spaces after the mitigation work, not before. This is not a failure of intent. It is the nature of engineering interventions in complex, dynamic systems. You solve one flow path and you change the pressure on adjacent ones. And this is the part that makes Miami Beach a genuinely instructive case rather than just a local story. The financial system understood what was happening before the physical system made it obvious. By 2022, several major insurers had begun restricting or exiting the Florida homeowners market entirely. By 2023, the withdrawals had accelerated. Farmers insurance, bankers insurance, and others announced they were limiting new policies or exiting the state. This was not driven by a single catastrophic event. It was driven by actuarial modeling of cumulative risk across a portfolio, the same kind of slow data-driven process that built the flood mitigation system in the first place, now pointing in the opposite direction. When private insurance exits a market, state-backed insurance of last resort fills the gap. In Florida, that is Citizens Property Insurance Corporation. By late 2023, Citizens had grown to become the largest property insurer in Florida by policy count, a position it was explicitly designed never to occupy. It is a backstop, not a primary market. Its growth is a signal, not a solution. What follows insurance is property values, not immediately and not uniformly. Waterfront properties in Miami Beach have continued to appreciate, driven partly by domestic migration from higher cost cities and partly by international capital that treats South Florida real estate as a store of value. But research from the First Street Foundation and from economists at Columbia and Princeton has documented what they call a climate discount beginning to appear in flood-exposed properties relative to otherwise comparable properties in the same markets. The discount is not large yet. It is present and it is growing. A homeowner in North Beach, one of the neighborhoods where king tide flooding is most frequent, described the experience of trying to sell her property in 2023. The offers she received were lower than comparable properties 2 blocks inland from buyers who had done their own research. She was not in a FEMA special flood hazard area. She was not required to carry flood insurance. She flooded anyway, twice in 1 year, and the market had already begun to price that in before she listed. That gap between official flood zone designations and actual flood experience is one of the most consequential data problems in American real estate right now. FEMA's flood maps were not designed to capture the kind of chronic, nuisance-level, subsurface-driven flooding that characterizes Miami Beach's king tide problem. They were designed to model catastrophic storm surge events. The result is that millions of dollars in property transactions are occurring without buyers having accurate information about what they are purchasing. The city of Miami Beach is aware of this. It continues to invest in mitigation. A second phase of pump installations and road raising projects is underway. The city has also begun piloting living shorelines, vegetated coastal buffers that absorb wave energy and reduce erosion, and has commissioned updated sea level rise projections to recalibrate future infrastructure planning against more recent NOAA and IPCC data. These are rational responses. They are also responses to a baseline that will itself continue to change. The question that engineers, planners, and economists are quietly working through is not whether Miami Beach can be protected indefinitely. It is at what point the cost of protection exceeds what protection can deliver, and how far in advance of that point the financial and political systems will be capable of acknowledging it. That is not a question with a clean answer. It is not a question Miami Beach has to answer alone. The same calculation is being worked through in Charleston, in Annapolis, in Honolulu, in Jakarta, and Amsterdam. Some of those cities have more time than Miami Beach. Some have less. What makes Miami Beach worth studying specifically is that it did everything. The conventional response to coastal flood risk is supposed to look like: it assessed the problem early, it raised the money, it built the infrastructure, it raised the roads. And the water is still coming up through the ground. That is not a story about failure. It is a story about the limits of what engineering can accomplish when the conditions it is engineering against are themselves in motion. The pumps work, the baseline shifted, and the gap between those two facts is where the real problem lives. This pattern will not resolve on its own, and it will not be unique to Miami Beach for much longer. If this kind of long-form, evidence-based analysis is what you come to this channel for, subscribe to Deep Signal, hit the bell, and leave a comment below. I want to know, do you think engineered solutions like Miami Beach's pump system are worth the investment, or are we building infrastructure that buys time while avoiding the harder conversation? I read every response.